Hello,
Hello.
everybody. Good morning. My name is Alex Serna. I'm the little Vizcaya icon that you see on your screen. And I'm here with Alex Maldonado. He's one of our LPFs, and he is going to be walking us through some of Miami's early history and talking about some of the most important figures in Miami history. So, Alex, go ahead.
Good morning. So, yes, I'm Alex, and I've got a conversation for you guys. We're going to be going over not so much about Vizcaya and not so much on Deering, but really about the time that he was in when he came in, moving in from Chicago down to Miami, the kind of environment that he was coming into and really the kind of figures that he was interacting with. And when he came into Miami, he has a major impact in the immediate surroundings as well as how the city develops moving forward. And so we're here right now. We are at the Village. This is here on the other side of South Miami Avenue from the main house. And we're not going to be saying too much about the buildings, but Deering, when he came in to Miami, he was buying a lot of land already. He was making some purchases, most interesting beyond just the land that he used to make Vizcaya. He purchased land from Key Biscayne, and with that, he actually buys the Cape Florida Lighthouse. Now, if you've ever gone to the Cape Florida Lighthouse, you really owe a debt to Jim, because when he came by, he wants to inspect his land. He wants to make sure that everything's up and running. And he's an engineer to take a look at that lighthouse. And they discover that the lighthouse, up until that point, only had a foundation that was about 4 or 5 feet deep. So if you can just imagine this entire lighthouse on the shores, facing the waters here in Miami, the hurricane land, and it's resting on a foundation 4 feet deep. This thing could have toppled over at any moment. And so the engineers, they get to work. Deering gets the whole thing uh, extended, and it's one of the interesting parts of Miami history that we still have the lighthouse, in part thanks to the efforts of James Deering and his engineers. Now, James Deering, when he's coming down to Miami, he's hiring a lot of help to help make Vizcaya. Now, this help, in fact, the help that helps make Vizcaya and make all these lovely buildings over here, this is largely due in thanks to the hardworking workers from the Bahamas. In the early 1900s, late 1800s, or really just all throughout the 1800s, there's this thing called the Homestead Act. And it basically says that if you're coming in to Miami, if you work, you'll get yourself a parcel of land. And this is very attractive to workers coming in from the Caribbean, because they get to work, which is hard to come by where they were from, and they get land. And so the Bohemians are coming in, and they're really one of the earliest waves in Miami. It's interesting to think, when we think about Miami these days, it's very much like it's about the Latino culture and everything. But back then, no, it was about the people from the Bahamas, and they're bringing in all these workers, all this culture, and they're using their expertise in coral rock and in the tropical environment and the weather to help basically set up the Gables area and even the surrounding areas around here. So really, like, this city without them would have been drastically different. And Deering is definitely taking advantage. He hires a slew of these workers to get started on his gardens. They are picking up the slack after World War One starts, and all of his international laborers have to go off and fight. And they're going around and they're running this show even after the house gets started. And amongst those workers of his, he's got one really important one in particular. It's a man named Ebenezer W.F. Stirrup. And I've got a photo for you right here. This man right here. So E.W.F. Stirrup he was an immigrant from the Bahamas, but he was a bit of an entrepreneur. He would do the work, but instead of being paid in money, he would get paid in tracts of land. And so he was working for Deering as a chauffeur and then as a farmer. He also had a carpentry background. And when he was done, he owned these huge parts of property that gets set up in the Gables area. Now, if you're from the Gables, you definitely might have heard already of Stirrup. He was one of the earliest millionaires, maybe the first uh, black millionaire, definitely the first Bahama from the Bahamas. And he uses the land that he's acquired to set up the famous shotgun houses, these sort of 3-room in a line houses with a door in the back and the front. And he sets up like about a hundred or maybe a couple hundred of these, and he invites immigrants from the Bahamas or other African Americans to come in, set up shop, and get their own homes where they can start up their own lives. And hundreds of these people flock in and they come into the area and basically set up the West Grove. And I can only imagine just how much of this land he got from Deering. And so this sets up a community, it sets up the culture here in this area, and it really helps develop Miami, and especially this surrounding Coral Gables area, into really what it is. Now, another interesting figure hired by Deering. When we think about this guy and we think about the people who made this place, there's the three big names, which are Paul Chalfin, Diego Suarez, and F. Burrell Hoffman. Now, not to do anything with these three people, well, with Chalfin, one of his assistants was an architect named Phineas Pace. Now, Phineas Pace actually designed the buildings here on the village side. So these are his work. He also helped design the casino in the gardens. And so Phineas Pace is an architect, but he was also educated in the arts. He actually went to the same school that Chalfin did in Paris. And when he finished his work here, he went back to his firm and he got brought in after some work, more work around in the area. He gets kind of this reputation as a man who makes really good houses. And he gets picked up by George E. Merrick, who is basically the master builder and the founder of Coral Gables. Now, actually, I just realized, I think when I was talking about EWF Stirrup, I think I may have said Coral Gables. Sorry, EWF Stirrup was in the Grove. Just in case I said that wrong, he set up West Grove, not Gables. But in Coral Gables, George E. Merrick, he has this sort of dream team of architects headed up by his uncle Fink, and they're designing these buildings in the Grove and in Coral Gables to make it basically this beautiful ultra planned city that Merrick wanted to capture the Spanish and the Mediterranean here in Miami, kind of like what Deering is doing, trying to capture this Italian essence. And they are looking for an architect who inside is really an artist. And they find Phineas Pace. And so Phineas Pace gets hired in on the team, and he brings these ideas of color that are essential to the aesthetic of Coral Gables. When you go through Coral Gables, that sort of color palette, that look, Phineas Pace's hand is in all of that. And so when you say you're going to the Venetian pools, Pace worked on that. City Hall in Coral Gables, Pace worked on that. Hundreds of the houses there, offices, all of that. The tawny red, those yellowish browns, the blues, those, I think he would use these sage greens, these style of rooftops, all of that. Phineas Pace was working with the architects under George E. Merrick, getting that all set up and designed. Now, while he's also doing this, Pace also gets hired in by the other Deering brother, Charles Deering, and he also gets work on getting Charles Deering's house built. And so that's down the way from James Deering's house over on Old Cutler Road. And so Charles, like Deering, another essential powerhouse of a person coming into the Miami area, definitely making waves. And so James and Charles, the two of them, they were making friends with a lot of the locals here, a lot of the other, you know, famous names that you hear when you're looking at Miami history. And Charles, like Deering, he's an industrialist, but he's got these interests in botany and in art, and he makes friends with David Fairchild. Now, David Fairchild, if you're from the area, you've definitely heard of the Fairchild Botanic Gardens. That's one of the Fairchild's projects, but Charles helps Fairchild by giving him this huge donation of land where Fairchild gets to making this introduction station. Now, these are areas where Fairchild would bring in plants from all around the world and basically see like whether or not they're useful for American farmers. And at these stations, the ones that Charles gave in particular, he focused on cacti, but these stations, they brought in many marvelous things to us. Like, can you imagine Fairchild, for example, he brought mangoes to Miami. Can you imagine Miami without mangoes? That's absurd. But all this sort of sets up this sort of influence that cannot be understated. And besides the botanics, Charles and James, they also had this other huge passion. They love boats. Charles was a Navy man, and James, if when you come by, he has his boat landing. He's got a barge out in the front shaped to look like a ship, and both of them had several yachts. Now, James and Charles, being the avid boatsmen, they make friends with a Carl G. Fisher. Now, Carl G. Fisher was another super powerful man. He is coming around on the heels of the Lincoln Highway that connects the East and West Coast. He's making the Dixie Highway now, connecting Chicago all the way down to Miami, and it terminates at Miami Beach. And so Carl G. Fisher wants to build up Miami Beach. He's got this idea, like, imagine at the end of my highway, a resort island. Wouldn't that be great? And so he's making Miami Beach, and to really promote it, he's got this race, the Miami Regatta. This was a famous race over in 1915, 1916. And James and Charles, they're visiting, and they've got a boat, actually a gift or at least a trade from Charles Fisher. And they race against Charles Fisher in his own boat at the regatta, and they beat him. If you want to see the trophy, it's in Vizcaya. It's on the first floor by the entrance hall and the case. You can see that trophy there. And so these figures they're really making these histories, and they are propping up the foundation of Miami. We got Miami Beach, the Gables area, the Grove. There's 100 other figures that are just like surrounding them. Figures like Flagler, of course, Douglas. Marjorie Stoneman Douglas is a journalist at this time, and she's writing all kinds of things about these crazy guys who are building basically an entire city up in South Florida. And Deering is really here, like in the front of it all. Now, I don't know if there's any questions, but I'll be happy to answer them. But beyond that, I hope you guys enjoyed it.
So thank you, everybody, for being with us. We do want to close out with one little announcement that kind of ties into our historical figures presentation here. We are going to be having David Rohn with us this weekend. He is a contemporary artist that has worked with us in the past. And let me see if I can show you here. He is going to be dressing up and embodying Mr. Deering, as well as the chef that worked at the estate. And he's going to be just walking around embodying these characters all weekend. He's going to be James Deering on Sunday. And then the chef, whose name I always forget, Alex, help me out.
Theo Kaze.
Thank you.
Monsieur Theo Kaze.
So he's going to be the chef on Saturday. The chef, I think, is the favorite, in my opinion, personality-wise. But if you get a chance to come on by and experience this in person, it'll be a real treat. You can reserve your tickets, as always, at vizcaya.org, and we hope that you can come and visit us. Thank you so much for being with us this morning.
I hope you guys got a chance to see David Rowan. Real interesting guy. You'll definitely get a hoot. We all love his work here at Vizcaya. Visitors always love to see the images. I guess some background. He did a work for Vizcaya a couple of years ago for our contemporary arts project called Help. So David, he did research on a lot of the laborers who worked and a lot of the maids, the flower pressers, and all these folks, and he dressed himself up as them, and he's got these sort of family portraits put all around the house, because this is basically the Vizcaya family. And so I hope you guys get a chance to see it. Hope you guys get a chance to meet David Rowan.
Okay, thank you guys so much, and we'll see you at Vizcaya.
Thanks for watching.
Bye.